Hello again. I've been doing a series of reminiscences about various Mandali, and so far I've done Padri, Mansari, Meheru, Eruch, and the circle member Darwin. And I had planned on continuing and featuring one person each video, but due to some health problems, I'm going to sort of modify what I'm doing from here on out. This will be today a medley of Mandali memories of several, and featuring primarily Mani and Adi K, Irani, but also some memories of a few other people. And haven't been able to research as well as I would like, but hopefully they'll be enjoyable and added to the memories that various people have had of the Mandali. So let's see. I'm going to start with Adi K. Irani, Adi Sr. He was born September 4th, 1903, and he passed on March 4th, 1980. He was a charismatic kind of guy, and his style was a little more formal in the sense that he would give talks and have questions and answers, unlike what many of the Mandali would do. Way back when in the 1920s, Baba said to him, "You will be my Vivekananda." Vivekananda was the chief disciple of the perfect master Ramakrishna and would speak on his behalf, not just in India, but in the US. And Adi had forgotten all about this. And then after Baba dropped the body, Adi started giving these talks and going on tours and talking about Baba. And Kourosh had reminded him, remember Baba said you would be his Vivekananda. He had forgotten completely. So he would give these talks in the Ahmednagar Meher Baba Center. And for a while he gave sort of theme talks. I think he did the Everything and the Nothing, and he did God Speaks, but he did them quite late in the evening, so we nicknamed them God Sleeps meetings. But mostly he would just give these talks about an hour long, and the last 15 minutes really rev up the feeling. And there would be questions and answers, and he had his own unique style of describing things, telling stories to describe things. So I'll be jumping around in a rather disjointed way, but hopefully people can piece things together. During his talks, he liked to recite, he loved poetry, especially Urdu and Persian poetry. And he would first recite in the native tongue, and then he would translate into English. And he'd sit there and say, according to the great poet, so he would say, ish taha taha, and he would gesticulate. Then he'd take a drink of water with his arthritic hands. He was always impeccably dressed, but he didn't always, you can notice that he sometimes hadn't shaved for 3 or 4 days. And I think that was because of what appeared to be his rheumatoid arthritis. He would also intersperse his talks with jokes, and they would be Sikh jokes, kind of like the equivalent of our politically incorrect jokes, blonde jokes or Polish jokes. And I found them to be kind of corny, but it was so enjoyable to see him laugh and enjoy his own jokes. They often centered around the apparent fact that in the Sikh religion, you're not supposed to smoke, but you can drink, and some really like to drink. Anyway, he'd tell these Sikh jokes, and when he would laugh, not a lot of sound would come out. It would be like, and if you came late to his talks, he would let you know it. He'd say, "You're late. Come on in, sit." And he'd glare at you. I remember him doing that in 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80. But after that, he'd just glare. And the reason he would insist on being on time, just the way Margaret Crash did, and she would not let you into a talk if you were late. She'd lock the doors in the center library in Myrtle Beach, is that Baba was so strict about time. And the Mandali would talk about time and Baba time. If he said, be there at 9, you better be there at least 9:15. So, yeah, and Adi would sometimes greet us by saying, who are you, how are you, why are you, where are you, what are you? And then he'd laugh. He was delightful. He had a real dignity about him. And let's see, what else will I say? He didn't mince his words. I'll read a few of his quotes here. He would say, I'd rather be in hell with Meher Baba than be in heaven without him. And he had sort of a stern look about him oftentimes, but when he started to talk about Baba, that would all change. When people would ask him, what was his voice like? Oh, how can I explain, sir? And he said that he had a juicy singing voice, whatever that means. And Adi said he sang in a deep, loud voice with resonant notes and tars, T-A-R-Z. I have a suspicion, I may be wrong, tars is another pronunciation for dard, D-A-R-D, which literally means pain, from my understanding, but it means the pain and agony of yearning and longing. Like the blues would be an example of dard and singing. Certainly the ghazals. Adi would stress, and he wasn't the only one that would stress this. Meherji would say these 4 things as well. Adi said, to please Meher Baba, mold your life to his orders. Do not go after another master. Engage in sex only in marriage. Use no illicit drugs. These are mentally and spiritually harmful. And don't deceive for money. Look at other people's money as rocks. This pleasing is greater than love. Study the discourses for more direction. These discourses may be pleasing to read, but suffering to practice. So this was often mentioned during his talks. Nowadays it rarely gets mentioned, I guess because so many of us are still falling short in at least some or one of those areas. But it's important. One time, according to my diary notes, I was asked, I don't know if it was directly by Adi or not, but I was asked to tell how I came to Baba's story at the Ahmednagar Center. And I sat next to Adi, and after every couple sentences or so, he would translate into Marathi so that the Indians, who were basically the attendees, could understand. Let's see. Okay, so when I first went to India, I was not a Baba lover, and I was just learning about Baba. And there were people telling me that I shouldn't have long hair. They used to have long hair, but now that they're Baba lovers, they cut it. And things like that. And I should give up being a vegetarian and eat meat. And this really upset me. And so I went to talk And also people were smoking cigarettes at the dining table and on the bus. And that was a problem for me. So I decided to go talk to Adi about these things. And Adi said, "Sir, it is very hard for me to give you advice about getting angry about these things because I myself still get angry." And that really endeared me to him, the human side. And as an aside, I'll tell the story about how there were these two Indian guys hanging out at the trust compound, feigning an interest in Baba, but they were actually trying to pick up Western female Baba lovers. And when Adi found out about this, he stormed out of his office, kicked them literally in the butts, and said, "Get the hell out of here." But afterwards he explained, he said, "I didn't kick them straight forward with my foot to hurt them, I kicked them with the side of my foot." So anyway, so getting back to the story about my being angry and frustrated, he said, "No, Baba didn't say you had to have long hair or short hair. Maybe your friends think you're trying to be a guru." And I said, "No way, that's not it." So, and about, what was the other thing? Oh, about being vegetarian. I said, "That's fine, you know." So, anyway, he gave me examples of the folly of expressing anger. As Baba said, it's okay to feel angry. If you didn't feel angry, what difference is it between you and a stone? But try not to express the anger. So he said, if little children were to throw rocks at you, Philip, would you throw rocks back at them? And it just took the edge off of everything. Of course, they're acting like children. And when I perceived them in that way, it helped lessen my anger. And he also said, "Do you know Ferrum Working Boxwala, the man that works for me?" And then in Adi fashion, he said, "You know, the man, his ears stick out." Odd-looking man. So I said, "I don't know him. I see him all the time, but I haven't met him." And he said, "Well, there used to be a crow, and the crow would swoop down near his head, and eventually Ferrum got a rock and threw it at the crow. After he escalated things by doing that, the crow actually came down and pecked his head. After that, Ferrum thought about getting a gun to shoot the crow. He said, 'Sir, do you understand the message?' I said, 'Yes.' So, and after I left, I also, this is kind of unusual for me, I got the feeling that it was, since I was so stressed out and upset about all these things, I had the feeling he was praying for me. So, yeah, he would readily admit his own faults. I remember once he came out to Meherabad and gave a talk. And after the talk, maybe 3 or 4 of us sat on the Sabha Mandap, which is near Baba's cabin, which is near the tomb. And he was eating, and he said, "Actually, I shouldn't be eating this close. I should eat where you're supposed to eat, under the tin shed." So he would admit things like that. Anyway, let's see. One of the things he would say during his talks, and remember I was not yet a Baba lover, he would say, "If I were to meet Rajneesh, I would slit his throat." And I thought, oh my God, he would slit the throat of another master, not realizing what this individual was like. And I won't go into those stories. Anyway, I was thinking of leaving before I was fully convinced about Baba. And my friend Alan Connie, without telling me, went to see Adi to tell him what distress I was in about what he had said during his talks. And Adi was in his underwear getting ready for bed, but he came out. And after Alan told him about my discomfort and thinking of leaving, he said, "Aha, yes, sir. I will not say that anymore during my talks." So, anyway, I remember another time Alan took me over to the trust and showed me the book The Wayfarers, which has a chapter called Those Who Bear Witness, and it's the musts when they first see Baba, exclaiming things, "Oh look, Lord Rama's come back again. I would take 1,000 births just to be near him once again." Things like that, recognizing Baba, and I thought, this is either the wildest fiction or the wildest truth. I think it's the wildest truth. Anyway, while I'm over there in Adi's office, Bob Street at the time was assisting and selling Baba books there on behalf of the trust. Adi said to Bob, give him, it was either Mayor Baba's Call or the Universal Message. And so Bob Street says, that'll be, 25 paisa or whatever. And Adi says, no, you fool, I said, give it to him. And then I remember going back to my residence in Ahmednagar. This is before the Pilgrim Center. And them reading it to me. It had a deeper effect. Baba was working away on me. How Baba came to me story is elsewhere online. So I'll mention that in case anyone is interested in the story. And also my poetry selections from my book, Roses, a Book of Verse, and my online book, Fragrance. Okay, enough of that. So, but getting back to Adi and kicking those two guys, Adi would say, I received kicks and kisses from Meher Baba, but I got more out of the kicks than the kisses. That I'm paraphrasing. Adi would often talk about conviction, and you could feel his conviction in Baba when he would talk. And Adi himself was a very social, in many ways extroverted person. And many of the people, I'm an introvert, but many of the people that were drawn to him were also very social and extroverted. Just an observation on my part, not all of us. He was good friends with Eruch's uncle, Nashwan Mama, Nashwan Sata, who was the first one in the Jesawala family, along with one of his brothers, to see Baba when he went on a long walk from Ahmednagar out to what became Mehrabad, and saw Baba and said, oh, look, he looks like Zoroaster come back again. And anyway, once in a while, Adi would come to visit Nashwan Mama at Akbar Press, which we called Mayor Colony, not the current Mayor Colony. Baba spent a lot of time visiting there, and he even stayed overnight there with the Prem Ashram boys one time. Anyway, when Adi would come to visit Nashwan, I remember just how relaxed and smiling they would be when they'd be talking with each other. And then he would come over and talk with those of us who were staying at Akbar Press. It's quite delightful. One of Adi's sayings was about habit. He did say that, the mind creates habits and problems. It can also solve them. And he said, but habit's tough. He said, you get rid of the H, there's still a bit left. You get rid of the A, there's still a bit left. You get rid of the B, it is still there. You get rid of it, and there's still a T remaining. But you must try, sir. So, let's see what else we got here. Oh, he would say, when people say in terms of what Baba expects from us, they say, I can. He said, it usually means I don't want to. So, and Adi would say the following. He'd say, be careful about engaging with shameless people. I've certainly had this experience. It's like wrestling with a pig in a slop pen filled with shit. Remember, the pig doesn't mind being there. And I'm tempted to say more about that, but I will not. A few more things about Adi coming up. Oh, here's a somewhat risque thing. Adi K. Irani was the copyright holder for most of Baba's literature by Baba's order. And there was a Baba lover in India who reproduced certain Baba literature without obtaining Adi Sr.'s permission. This fellow even printed in the reproduced literature, quote, by kind permission of Adi K. Irani. Adi's response when this came to his attention was, quote, that bugger of buggers, I never gave him my kind nor my unkind permission. If he were here now, I'd pluck out every hair of his beard, one by one. And then he would demonstrate with his arthritic fingers, mimicking the action of plucking out this man's hair. Oh, God. So the poetry that Adi liked to quote, there is one line that particularly exemplified his life, people say. And that line of poetry that he would quote went thus: renounce this world, renounce the next world, renounce the inner worlds, renounce the desire for God realization, and then renounce renunciation. Reminds me a little bit of Baba saying, if anyone asks you what this new life is about, say renunciation. And at the end of it, it says, and renounce renunciation also, or with the thought of it. So Heather, who has a real gift for writing, Heather Nadell, when Adi passed on, wrote, how we shall miss his vibrant sounding of the call to love and serve the God-man. Yet his example of service, love, and surrender to his beloved will live forever in our hearts. Got a little bit more here. As I say, Adi was quick to mention his own weaknesses, and he would implore us to work on our own and let us know what Baba's pleasure was. So Baba said, in this world of innumerable frailties, the greatest of all frailties is the common fault of not being able to face, accept, and acknowledge one's own weaknesses. This is the frailty of all frailties. And Baba said his work was to bring what is unconscious into consciousness. And Baba said, becoming aware of your own weaknesses opens up your way and leads you to rise above them. They all have to come out sometime, and the sooner the better. Things are being stirred up, and they are all brought out to prepare you for the greater future that is to be yours. And this is from the Perfect Master Faridun Attar. And outside of Eruch's bedroom, some people are familiar, there is a little desk. And the desk has a glass top, and under the glass top are some great quotes from different spiritual ones, certainly including Baba. This one, as I mentioned, is from Attar. When God wills good for his devotee, he grants insight into their faults. Baba says eventually the righting of all wrongs takes place. Sometimes that has to happen in rougher ways than others, through karma playing out lifetime back and forth. Other times it can be expedited through recognition, forgiveness, etc. So I think I just have two more brief things from Adi. These are two prayers. I'd be remiss not to mention the book Just to Love Him, Talks and Essays about Meher Baba by Adi K. Irani. These are basically the talks that I mentioned before that he would give in the Ahmednagar Baba Center, well edited. The first is called, I don't think he named it this, it's called Adi's Prayer. Call yourself a lover of Avatar Meher Baba, but you must be willing for your love of Baba to suffer labors and sorrows, vexations and anxieties, and lack of necessities, sickness, injuries, reproof, disgrace, humiliations, shame, correction, and contempt. Jai Baba will then be yours. Of course, Baba's there to help us every step of the way. And this is a prayer. It doesn't state it in just to love him, but it was written and composed. It came to Adi while he was on the center in Myrtle Beach. It does give the date as July 1979. So, beloved Meher Baba, I'll start over because I'm going to make certain things which were written in the singular in the plural. Beloved Meher Baba, bless us all so that in the stress and strain of our daily lives and the fluctuations of our mind, we learn to relax wholly and wholeheartedly and float on the ocean of your love and call for your breath of joy and breeze of compassion and your wind of strength to flood into every fiber of our bodies, every corner of our minds, and every space of our hearts, and cleanse us of all our impurities, and make us worthy of your love, of your obedience, of your service, and above all, your pleasure. Jai Baba. So I'm going to share some things about Pendu, wonderful Pendu. When I first met him, he was, 1975, he was the manager of Meheru. It's Baba's cousin, grew up very close to him, and he would say, I don't care about God, I just love Meher Baba. Totally devoted. I remember not knowing the Mandali's ways, being new. When Kaikabad's wife Jirbai died, I was walking next to Pendu directly behind the stretcher carrying Jirbai's body to the cremation grounds. Pendu looks at me with a wry smile, taps the stretcher with his cane, and says, "Why is she so lucky?" I didn't know that he was, as he used to put it, waiting for his visa. So the Mandali differed in that respect. You know, Margaret Krask loved life and wanted to continue carrying on in her body. Anyway, there was that experience. I remember I went through a phase during one of my pilgrimages where I thought, I don't want to wear the Mandali out, even though I want to hug them all hello and goodbye. I'll do so more sparingly. Pendu comes up to me one day and says, "Why don't you hug me anymore? It hurts my feelings." So, set me straight on that. One day at tea time, I'm out on the veranda of Mandali Hall in Meheru, and I'm standing talking with Eruch and a couple of other Baba lovers, and Pendu is coming in our direction with his cane slowly. And Eruch says, Pendu's on his way to go piddle. And he says, "Pendu, come here." Pendu comes over, and Eruch says to us, "This man has been in 3, I think he said 3, vehicular accidents once a truck fell on him. And my jaw drops and I whip my head around, I look at Pendu and he goes, so that happened. One day when I think it was my last Meheru day, I said, Pendu, I'm going back to the US, why don't you come back with me? He says, sure, why not? And when they would come and see us off at leaving Meheru to go back to Ahmednagar, we could stay at that time, let's see, from 9:30 in the morning if you rode your bike out, 10 o'clock arrival if you took the bus or rickshaws, and we could stay until 6 p.m. We used to nap in the New Life Caravan or a couple of the Mandali's bedrooms. It was very natural and free and open. Anyway, so they're seeing us off, and Pendu would come up to the bus, and he'd take his cane and he'd poke it through the window and pretend to poke us. We would grab the cane like we were going to steal it. No, no. It was just so light and wonderful. He had his favorite sort of reclining chair near Baba's blue bus. It's still there, it's been modified. And he would listen to the cricket matches on the transistor radio. We could hear the sound wafting into Mandali Hall while we're hearing or sharing Baba stories. He would fall asleep with the bogus news, as Baba called it, the newspaper that he loved to read over top of him. It was just kind of a delightful family atmosphere. He also had a tattoo, I think it was a tattoo of Baba. He was one sturdy, tough guy, and one of the 4 people that lasted through the new life with Baba, of the 4 males. Let's see. He lived in the room that later on Merwan Jasawala lived in. And when I first went out to Meheru, it had a different, I found out it's the room that Baba first lived in. And the door used to have holes in it. And the reason it had holes was so that the petrol lamps, or the fumes wouldn't accumulate. They would have some way of leaving. They've later switched out the doors. So I think I'll finish about Pendu by telling this story that I first learned from Peter Nordine. There is a well in Lower Meherabad near the new memorial tower. It's close also to Masaji's tomb and Chanji's gravesite, although he's not buried there. And the year is 1926, and Pendu, by Baba's orders, is working on some repairs to the well there. And he says, Baba, I have this terrible feeling like I'm going to fall in and I'm going to die. And Baba says, you're not going to die now. In 30 years, you'll be half dead. What happened 30 years later in 1956? He was in the accident with Baba, severely injured, in effect like half dead. And so what's half dead? 30 years. So another 30 years, does that imply that he would actually be dead in 1986? The answer is yes. Baba was telling him his future and he didn't even know it because Baba said all this in the cryptic language of you won't die now, you'll be half dead in 30 years, and it implies fully dead in 1986. So, okay, just a few memories now about Arnavaz. So Arnavaz was born in 1919 and passed on in 2009. I remember years before she died, she said, "I'm not going to live long." Someone asked her, "How do you know?" She said, "I know." Well, thank God for us, she didn't. And she went when she was supposed to go. Her, let's see, I have a few things here. One evening in 1967, when Arnavaz was staying at Meheru, she and Mera were alone with Baba in his room. Suddenly, Mera asked Baba, "What is the meaning of Arnavaz?" Baba gestured, "Gift of God." The name suits, as those who knew her could attest. Gift of God became the title of her autobiography, which recounts the story of her life in his love and service. Baba once told Arnavaz, "Be a mother to all." And for hundreds of young Baba lovers who came to know her after he had dropped the body, she became that indeed. Her life experience allowed her to slip into the role that he destined for her, listening without judgment to their problems and queries about life in the world, marriage, relationships, what Baba said about the occult, and many other aspects, how to reconcile the ways of modernity with what Baba wanted from each of his lovers. In fact, she specifically gave me literature about things that Baba said about different types of occult practices. She said, because you facilitate the discourse meetings, this will be helpful to share with people. When Baba was breaking old ties and dissociating from old habitations at the outset of the new life in 1949, he had the title to Meheru transferred to Nariman, that was her husband, one of the 4 new life arrangement wallas. Then when Nariman died, the property came under Arnavaz's name. And she kept that for many years and eventually handed it over to the trust. I never met Nariman. I debated whether to include this or not, but I think I will include this. My final goodbye with Arnavaz. At this point, she was bedridden at Meheru, and I went in to see her, and I wasn't planning on it being my final goodbye, because I was planning on coming to Meheru on the following day, which I did. But I didn't see her the following day, and I'll explain. It's because I knew the day before the following day, I came to know that that was my goodbye. So I went to see her, and she's lying flat in bed. She puts out her hands as for me to come closer, put them behind my head, push my head to hers, look me very focused in the eyes, kiss me on the lips, and I got up and left. I don't know entirely what to make of it other than that it was my goodbye, and it had to do with, giving her all, and I think internally telling me to give my all to Baba evermore. Anyway, that happened. It's very striking, and I thought that even though I was coming to Meheru the following day, I just knew that was my goodbye. Anything else would be anticlimactic. And Arnavaz is buried at Meheru. I remember her giving me diet advice, different things. She suffered a lot with heart problems and migraines, and the sun bothered her. That's why you would always see her with part of the sari draped over the top of her head. So a couple of quick stories about Alaba. arguably the most childlike of the male Mandali. And I may have told this story elsewhere online, I'm not sure. But one Amartithi, it was closing with Baba's prayers, and Marshall Hay always had this thing about so many Baba lovers have not memorized the prayers. And he had memorized them. Why didn't they memorize them? And he's one of the people that is to say the prayers. He's saying them in English. And so he's getting ready, but Alaba's ahead of him to say the prayers in his native tongue, Farsi. And Marshall somehow panics and he can't remember the prayer, and he doesn't have a copy, and there's no time to try to find one. And there's thousands of people there, it's Amartithi. But Alaba saves the day because Alaba starts to say the prayer, and as would happen with Alaba, he's overcome with feeling for Baba, throws himself on the ground, starts writhing in the dust. And someone says, "That's it, Amartithi's over, Jai Baba, everybody." And Marshall is saved from embarrassment unwittingly by Alaba, and also learns his lesson about judging others. Marshall loved to tell that story. What a great storyteller he was. So I remember Oliver inviting me into his room once, and I said, "I really like your room." "Oh, thank you." Oh, boy. So I went up to Hamirpur with just a few other people. I think there were 7 or 8 of us. And our leader was Oliver. And the building that they had us males stay in, the cement was still tacky and there was no furniture in it. They gave us a tata mat, just a straw mat, and we males slept, right packed up against each other. And when you have a down sleeping bag, there's no cushioning, it's feathers, and the tata mat's very thin, so it was quite uncomfortable. Plus Alaba kept me awake throughout the night for 2 nights. I slept next to him, inches away for 2 nights. But it's so sweet a memory because the reason he kept me awake was he kept repeating Baba's name in his sleep throughout the night. And every amount of seconds or minutes, I'm not sure, but continuously in different versions. It would be Baba, Meher Baba, Jai Baba, in his sleep for 2 nights. Reminds me of, I just feel he was madly in love with Baba. As how Mani once described Baba's elder brother Jamshid, he was mad in love with Baba. I'll mention Balna too. My first trip to India, the 3 people, if I had to pick 3, and that's hard to do, who most influenced me in terms of my coming to Baba, it would be Eruch, Mani, and Balna too. Balna too gave me my first tour of Meherazad. He would mention on 2 occasions, "You and I are of the same Sanskaric tribe," which meant what? I think it was things like we were both skinny, we were both sort of intellectually inclined, both book people, both developed chronic illnesses at the age of 19, things like that. So anyway, we had a real bond, and what a guy. A little bit about Meheru. So she was one of the 4 women during the new life she came to Baba. She was still a child. She would assist with Mera. Her parents were Mera's sister Frani and Adi's brother Rustam. She was very athletic. Like Rano, she had multiple talents. She could fix things and make things. And I felt that her passing, her passing marked the end of an era and that she was the last of the women Mandali. And at Mirazad, she saw to it that the particular atmosphere of Baba's time and of Mera's time was maintained. This is after the other women passed on. And by the atmosphere, I mean that certain je ne sais quoi, or undefinable yet undeniable fragrance or atmosphere. And I wrote, may it linger. And may she be remembered as one of his very, very closest lovers. She passed on April 21st, 2012. She came to the Myrtle Beach Center with Baba on April 21st, 1952. I'm told that unusually it rained in India when she passed on, and it was the same here in Myrtle Beach, heavy rains. I remember when the man that Baba described as his poet laureate, Madhusudan Pand, came to play after many years in Mandali Hall, and he came a day ahead of time with his entourage. And the Mandali all came over to hear him because he used to play for Baba in Guru Prasad. And one time Baba asked him to start playing, I think it was 9 in the morning, and he kept saying, keep playing, keep playing, keep playing, and he played straight until 5 o'clock, and he was very energetic when he played. And then he said, Baba, I can't do anymore. He may have played more music before Baba than anybody else. Anyway, when the women Mandali came over and Madhusudan started playing, you could tell they were reliving their experience at Guru Prasad. And I was sitting near Meheru and I could see it in her eyes. It was such a pleasure to be a fly on the wall. Madhusudan had not had his major stroke yet that affected his playing ability, as I recall. She had a sharp sense of humor sometimes. She could say things like, you just said that to me. My friend Peter Ravasa, on a return visit to India, she said, I remember you, but I choose to forget. Gordon Campbell said about Meheru, they were close, she was the clearest person I ever met. She was the maintenance person of Mirazad, Alan Wagner said. I think Rano had that role for a while too. The song, Keep Me in the Circle, the close circle, Meheru wrote that song. She also wrote poetry. She appreciated good acting, good poetry, the arts, and she would let you know. Clearly, she would let you know. Those are some of my fond memories because acting in the world in the junior class play and this variety show we had in the small town I grew up every year seemed like I was almost always making mistakes and it was embarrassing. But whenever it was a play at Mehrabad or Mirazad or for Mera's birthdays, I didn't mess up. I don't mean to suggest that various things I do for Baba, I never mess up. For years, I was a substitute person in the meeting place, introducing the programs for the regulars that usually did it. And no matter how much I would rehearse the times that Baba House is open, turn off your cell phones, this and that. I'd always make some mistake. And that's a blessing too. We need to have some humiliation in order to develop humility. Alan Wagner said, Mara had it the most for sure, but all the women Mandali had the girl side. Meheru also had a queenly side. She was in charge of the dogs. She was not a public person. Meheru was always at the bottom of the pecking order in the household. She was the youngest. She was strong and independent. She could handle it. She was always in the back. She was a handmaiden. She had a slingshot that chased away problem crows. And I've told elsewhere about playing badminton with her to entertain Mara on the porch, and how I was 19 years younger than she, physical education major, an athlete. She was better than I was. And she would trash talk me. Hit the shuttlecock, Philip, don't get the hedge a trim. I loved it. Marshall Hayes said her face was like an eagle, always seeing what was going on. And Gordon said, we give to Baba, then keep taking things back. Meheru gave to Baba, gave everything, and never took anything back. That's why she's one of the Mandali. I'm now moving on to Mani, but first there's something that I forgot to say that came to Meheru one day. One day while dusting things on her bureau, this thought came to Meheru. Mani sparkles, Mara glows, Baba shines. And it is his light that shines on them. May their light ever shine on us to help us see the path to him. Isn't that beautiful? So Sister Mani, there are some things that are just too personal to share, and the reasons that they're too personal to share is that they can be, I just don't wish them to be assessed, either overblown or underestimated, and they're just very personal. Plus the things that were said will probably tickle my ego too much. And believe me, they didn't always say pleasant things to me. Mani never said really unpleasant things to me, that she would catch me. I remember once she said, Philip, are you happy? And I wasn't happy at the time. And I said, well, yeah. Things like that. Another time she said, you're not leaving, are you? And I had made a decision to leave, and I couldn't fess up. I don't see myself as a person that tells lies, or at least rarely. But there I got caught twice. And she said, well, Baba will be with you wherever you go. And I did leave early. I was just in such physical and pain and whatnot, and struggling with some emotional issues as well. And when I returned to the West, a close friend of mine said, I've never seen someone come back from India and be less present back here. So my consciousness was still there. 6 weeks later, I went back to India and served out my time, so to speak, and so glad that I did. Anyway, so Mani was born in 1918, December 15th, and she passed on August 19th, 1996. In terms of people passing on, her passing and my mother's passing were the two that took the longest for me to really come to grips with. So, let's see. Baba said different things at different times about the two people that were first in his love. But the one that I relate to the most was his saying, Meheru is first in my love, and Mani is second in my love. Of everybody. So, Baba said, I love Mani very much, and her love for me is unique. And Baba said, Mani is very intellectual. You all say so, but even Eruch, who is himself very clever, says so. Even in reading my hand signs, Mani is matchless. After her is Eruch. I remember another time he said, Dr. Deshmukh and I forget who else, maybe Dr. Ghani, have these, towering intellects, but Mani can put them both in her hip pocket. And she only went to school until she was, I think, 13, something like that. Baba told her he couldn't come to live with her until she came out first in the class. And she would dawdle doing her homework. And then at the last minute she'd do it and she would end up first in her class. So Baba said that in the world she would have been a genius. And he also said that she was a genius. And he mentioned her acting, her plays, just everything about her. She was just so talented. I'm going to read a letter about that at the end of this little sharing. I said a letter about that, a poem about that. Okay, Mani used to say the following, which I think in AA circles is also popular. She said, the future is a mystery, the past is history, but the present is a present from God. Which reminds me of Baba saying, live more and more in the present, which stretches away beyond the past and the future. So, Mani would say, I am like a straw in the wind, which I took to mean whichever way Baba directs her, she goes. Mandali in general were that way. Whatever needs to be said, she says. Eruch used to say, oftentimes we don't know whether we said it or he said it. So I was in India when this mentally deranged person, I'm sorry, but that's how I feel about him, claimed he was this, that, and the other thing and something special and tried to hug Meheru and all this nonsense. And what was I going to say about that? Oh, I wasn't there. I was there when he first arrived. I could see that he was arrogant and something was wrong. He came with his sidekick. But I wasn't there the day that he tried to hug Meheru. I heard that Goer tripped him and people grabbed him. But the next day, Mani was in front of Meheru's porch walking back and forth, decrying what this disturbed individual had tried to do. And all of a sudden she said, you know what I wish for him? You know what I wish for him? I thought, here it comes, sudden death. I wish for him Meher Baba's love. That's how she thought. About Mani, I would say to know her is to love her. And after she passed on, Ted Judson allegedly said she was the life of the party. She was just so buoyant and spot on with what she would say too. So there are different versions of this, but Mani would quote this old, what she once described as an old Hindu poem. "O God, I asked you for strength so that I can work for you. You gave me weakness so that I can depend on you." So in the 70s, I made frequent and long visits, the mid to late 70s, of pilgrimage to Mehrabad and Meherazad. And then it was one of the most painful things in my life was that there was a 6-year and 9-month gap. And I had felt that Baba told me internally I would go back within 5 years. But shortly, as there were only 2 days left and 5 years was going to be up during that period. And then I had a dream, and in the dream, Baba literally appeared and pointed back, stay back. So that gave me some solace. And as I mentioned, after 6 years and 9 months, I did get back. But Mani would say, "Why so long between visits?" And the visit after that, it was why. I went to say goodbye, and it had been the time schedule seemed to be every 4 years I was getting there. And again, and I thought, oh, it's so crowded, and I just won't say I'm going. But then the Red Seas parted, and there she was under the tin shed. I said, "Mani, I'm leaving tomorrow or the next day, I forget." And she said, "Why so long between visits again?" And I just was speechless. I mean, I wanted to say health, jobs, money, this and that. It's not that I don't want to come. And anyway, she leaned forward and whispered in my ear, "I'll talk to Baba about it." And after that, the visits became more regular and shorter between visits again. Unbelievable. So, as I say, there's some things that are just too personal to share, and some that are borderline. After one pilgrimage, she was recalling about my first visit when I wasn't yet a Baba lover. And she told me, she said, "We knew you were one of us within a few moments," which I took to mean one of us meaning one of the Baba family, the greater Baba family. I remember Eruch saying, "We're so glad that Baba wanted you to stay, because during that first trip I kept planning to leave and go to other ashrams, and then I'd get sick again." Baba's really helped me a lot in life with sickness. One visit, it was either 1990 or 1994, I popped up in Mandali Hall for my first Mandali Hall visit, that pilgrimage. And Mani spoke out, "Look at Philip there. He's like a bird that keeps returning home to its nest." They would say such sweet things to us that would just be so endearing. It was not uncommon for them to say things like this to many of us. Although they used to say, Baba would say in the later years, "You will see they will come, these young ones," and he'd point, he'd say, "Gems. They'll be gems." Later on, Steve says, Mani modified it and said, "Some of them will be gems." I guess rhinestones count, I don't know. So there were a number of times that Mani would say something that would be exactly what I was thinking, and I want to mention a few of them and give my corrected understanding of what that is all about. So, according to my diary entry on October 2nd, 1990, I kept saying to myself, "It's incredible, I can't believe I'm here," meaning back at Meherazad. When Mani greeted me, she said, "It's incredible, I can't believe you're here." Which reminds me, when I was here 7 years ago, I had the feeling that it felt like I had been greeted, it felt like I had been here only yesterday, even though it had been 7 years. Anyway, Mani greeted me by saying that time, "It feels like you were here only yesterday, doesn't it?" So the thing was, I thought, wow, isn't that incredible? And I mentioned it to Bana too, and he just said, things are like that with family. He took the woohoo, she's reading your mind stuff right out of it. Yeah, Bana too said, regarding Mani saying exactly what I'm thinking, it's not intuition, it's being in tune. Things are like that with family. He said, be careful, you might get intuition and miss Baba. Intuition is sort of like a natural byproduct of seeking him and just loving him. It's not a goal, it's my feeling. And one of the sweet little things with Mani was, as we would leave Meherazad and the bus would round the corner, the trees would come in the way and everyone would turn back around and stop waving. But I realized you could still see Mani, and she would wave until the last person was waving back, which would often be me. It was so sweet. And I've mentioned this elsewhere, but my first 2 trips to India, when I'd look in Mani's eyes to hug her, I couldn't hold the look for very long because the depth of the love was too overwhelming. But it was beautiful. By my 3rd pilgrimage, Baba drew enough a veil that I could appreciate the beautiful, loving eyes, but it wasn't overwhelming. Let's see. This is just an example. This would happen. Things like this would happen with, if not everybody, a lot of us. I'm back on pilgrimage, and Mani sees me for the first time and says out loud, "It's Philip," and runs over to me and hugs me. And I remember one visit, it was my second to last visit when she was still in the body. And I came back 6 weeks later and saw her again. That when I first greeted her, she held my hand after we hugged and kept holding it for a long time. And I had the feeling that she won't be with us for much longer, and she was acknowledging our bond. There's another incident when I came back 6 weeks later after leaving early from that pilgrimage, where she whispered something in my ear, but that's very personal. One of the other things, they would have me tell my Baba story almost every pilgrimage, and Eruch would say, it's your ticket of admission. And I remember thinking that I was challenging Baba, and that he was like, okay, you want to meet me at that level? I'll challenge you and I'll throw you with one hand, but I'll catch you and cradle you with the other. And Mani said to me, without my having said that to her, It's like he's throwing you with one hand and he caught you with the other hand and cradled you. Actually, I didn't use the word cradle, she did. Eruch has said that we ourselves are like lifeless cradles, but we need to rock that cradle with Baba in it, because Baba is what we really are. I highly recommend the book The Joyous Path in 2 volumes by Heather Nadel. Najur Kotwal said, she was a master of everything. Baba put into her a bit of all the talents of the world. She was loving, she was giving, she was forgiving, she was humorous, she was very understanding, she was a composer, a poet, and the greatest was she was an actress. In acting, nobody could supersede her. She was very childlike. She would blurt out things if things were wrong, like, Mansari shouldn't have all those dolls up there. They've been biting people. One of them was biting people. She just sort of blurted out in front of all of us in Mandali Hall. I remember one time she and Mansari were arguing in English up on the hill, and all of a sudden, as it got more vociferous, they switched into Gujarati. And then afterwards, they hugged and smiled. So, Mani was strong by nature, says Heather, but intensely sensitive. So sensitive that even flower remedies or homeopathic treatment affected her more than most other people. Sheltered from the world, focused exclusively on her 2 beloveds, Baba and Mera, wholeheartedly loyal, sensitive to atmosphere, as she used to say. What could she possibly have felt seeing her adored brother and beloved lifelong companion lying on the ground covered in blood after one of his accidents? So, okay, I'll just end with this poem that I wrote back in 1997 that I feel captures Mani. It's called Love Letter. First, I'll give a setup piece to it. After the passing of Mabel Ryan, Baba wrote the following in a letter to Delia de Leon. I think that it serves as a good setup piece for the following poem written after Mani's passing. Baba wrote, I know how you feel parting with dear Mabel, but Mabel has not parted from you. She is closer to you now than she was or could be before. Love knows no separation, and because you loved her so much, nothing, not even death, as physical separation is called, can break that tie of love there is between you. There, Baba. So here's the poem. I called it Love Letter. Who can write of Mani who is more alive than me or you? Words must fail to measure one whose love light shone just for the sun. Yet your words made us feel blessed, dear Eastern Star, scribe to the west. Sparkling pointer toward our goal, in speechless rhythm I extol, stardust caught while passing by, in silent journey through night sky. Spriteful dancer to his tune, delightful guardian of his moon, sister of the avatar, the sister to us all you are. None so talented I've met, so in this world you were, and yet safely nestled in his arms, removed from Maya's empty charms. Special in your eyes we seemed, your eyes reflecting love that beamed. What you saw was him inside, for from your sight he did not hide. So much love from you we felt, and what a card in you he dealt. Playful, youthful, joyous too, obedient and wise, it's true, grace and wit and charm most sweet, your gifted life stayed at his feet. Love like this must take one home, and that is why our bird has flown. Mani dear, so present here, now that you've left, you're yet more near. Twinkle, twinkle, crown jewel star, we don't wonder where you are. Everywhere with him you'd be, and closer than the things we see. Up above, yet with us still, inspiring pilgrims, skyward till sunlight burns our crusts away, exposing veiled eyes to his day. How you shine for him alone, and yet we love you as our own. Paradox, it's true, you see, that all are one, there is no we. Sharing oneness all around, that is how his love is found. Hence it lies with us to take the love you've shown for Baba's sake, turn it round and pass it on, thus turning darkness into dawn. Precious Mani, glowing bright, we wish we may, we wish we might, pay due heed to heavenly guides, which through compassion he provides. Selfless starlight, what a boon, in concert with pure Mara's moon. Left to right you shine for God, and center lovers on his nod. Homeward bound we're sure to go, inspired by your tandem glow. Mani sweet, my words all melt, when what my heart from yours has felt. Thus in silence this remains, that love gift shared without word stains. Nonetheless, these heart-sown words I've flown to you as my songbirds, celebrating within rhyme that gift untouched by space and time, as they soar through mystic skies, for those who see with lovers' eyes. These last notes will spring like flowers across the night as cosmic showers. Thank you for the life you gave in being Baba's lifelong slave. Also for the light you are, still pointing toward the avatar. For giving all like you, dear friend, means love that lives beyond the end. Jai Baba.